Coming up, we'll hear about the challenge of mastering something even trickier than starting our very own ego. Please give it up for Chris Nenov with The Fine Line of Ego.
What if I told you that your greatest ally and your fiercest rival are one and the same? The answer lies within you, your ego. Ryan Holiday tells us ego is the enemy, but Sun Tzu, the ancient strategist, says keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Perhaps the same should be said about the ego. In a world where standing out isn't just an option, but a necessity, the ego can be the fuel that drives ambition. But left unchecked, it can also be the fire that burns everything down. Today, I would like to explore the idea of embracing a healthy ego, not as a destructive force, but as a guiding light to ambition and self-improvement. But beforehand, let's begin by analyzing what the ego actually is and how it is connected to us. By definition of Cambridge Dictionary, the ego is the level of your ability and intelligence and your importance as a person. Oxford Languages defines the ego as your sense of self-esteem or self-importance. Let me repeat that, self-esteem or self-importance. When you hear these two phrases, or at least for me, the absolute first thing that I imagine is I need to succeed. I want to do something with my life. I need to develop myself. In fact, ego is the Latin word for I. Great, then why is it that people consider the ego as something inherently bad? If both its dictionary and Latin definitions present the ego as a part of us, as something without a negative connotation, there should be nothing wrong, right? Well, considering the amount of effort Ryan Holiday put into creating a book with an exceptionally strong title as Ego is the Enemy, we can see that there is indeed a problem. But why? Well, let me show you. I want everyone in this room to think of as many words as possible that have ego as their root. Now, the first ones that come to mind are egomaniacal, egotistical, egoistic, egoism. The dictionary Merriam-Webster has 43 to be exact. Now, guess how many have a positive meaning or connotation? A big and massive zero. Let me tell you, every single word, no exceptions, is in some way connected to arrogance or selfishness. Yes, of course, being arrogant and not thinking about anyone rather than yourself is a poor way to lead a life. However, what all these words represent is an unhealthy ego, an unhealthy you, one through which your feeling of self-importance is inflated to an extent where there is a mismatch between your perception of yourself and reality. Rich Divani actually phrased it perfectly. Ego gets a bad rap, but it shouldn't. Let's prove that. Your sense of self-esteem is determined by many factors: achievements, social comparisons, self-talk and beliefs, but there is one that stands out from the rest: feedback from others. Consider this: the human is a social creature. It is ingrained in our nature to try and stand out, to try and fit in, and have something that makes us more special than the rest. This, of course, creates a never-ending cycle of competitiveness, but that is the nature of the world. Now, should we be okay with it? Yes, but only if it doesn't spark up conflict or damages us in any way. That, however, was not my case. Now, imagine a competitive 17-year-old who likes to do sports that test him to his maximum abilities. Now, this teenager has never had the opportunity to compete in a field where he believes he's good at, running. I hope you understood I'm talking about myself, so I'm switching to first person speech now. So anyways, I'm lying in my bed, losing brain cells watching Instagram reels, and suddenly I get a call from my friend Victor. What you should know about Victor is that he's an absolute monstrosity of an endurance athlete. He does it all: swimming, running, cycling. He's the best at them. So Victor calls me, we get the usual out of the way, and what happens is he asks me this very intriguing question. Chris, how does it sound signing up for the Sofia Half Marathon? It started off as an idea of running the 21.1 kilometer distance as a fun bonding activity. We didn't see each other often, considering we studied in different schools. Now, while we were discussing the idea, my friend mentioned something else. He had completed the same distance in the past. So my first thought, and the most sane one before the cycle of unfortunate events, was, maybe he could teach me some tactics, how to save energy, for instance. But that was quickly replaced with, how fast did he complete it? So anyways, I'm in physics class, bored to an extent where I'm losing consciousness, and this sudden desire to increase my sense of self-esteem hit me like a sledgehammer. I immediately opened the website of the Sofia Marathon. I unleashed my stalking abilities, and what I found was that my boy had completed the distance in quite a timely manner, an hour and 30 minutes. So I'm standing there thinking, huh, that's kind of fast. What is it? 4 minutes and 15 seconds per kilometer? Achieving such a pace requires a great deal of training. Now, I knew that this year I had no chance of competing with him. He was going to drop me at the first 5K, but with his previous efforts, I thought that maybe I could. My dumbass was driven by that desire to increase my sense of self-esteem. So the day arrived and the race began. The first 10K, survivable. My pulse was through the roof, of course, what can be expected, but I was still going fast. I had to beat that time. That way I could prove both to myself and to Victor what I was made of. 5 kilometers remained. My pulse was completely through the roof. I was thinking of giving up. Everything hurt. But on my phone, however, I had set a timer of an hour and 30 minutes. And when I saw that I had around, well, what was it, 20 minutes left to complete 5 kilometers, the adrenaline hit me. 2 minutes left. The finish line was in my sights, but I was still pretty far away, so I pushed one last time. 30, 29, 28. I was thinking of giving up. I was gasping for air, and 15 seconds before the hour and 30 was up, I completed the distance. My ego acted as a driving force to succeed because I was trying to exceed my friend's achievement. Let me repeat that. When you exceed, you succeed. I want that thought to sink in. I managed to do so against all my preparation, against the power of my legs, for which I give credit to my ego. It was that need to go beyond my limits which gave me the confidence that I can achieve anything. Now, great. I completed the distance, I increased my self-esteem, and I'm now feeling better as a person. How perfect, however, isn't the word I would use to describe the 7 months of cartilage cracking I felt in my knees afterwards. Because of my ego and my desire to increase my sense of self-esteem, I had acted arrogantly towards my body, and I had therefore damaged it. I wasn't moderate and let my strive for success cloud my judgment on my health. Does this mean that the ego is inherently bad? No. But how do we keep ourselves from the fine line between ignorance and confidence? Temperance. It may sound like a simple word from the English dictionary, but temperance isn't that. Actually, temperance is known as one of the 4 virtues of Stoicism. The others are wisdom, courage, and justice. But what makes temperance stand out from the rest is the idea of moderation and self-regulation. Consider this. The human is a social creature. It is ingrained in our nature to try and stand out. Now, Stoicism aims to teach us how to lead a happy, or stated simply, well, not really simply, a virtuous life. It offers many important lessons on how to discipline yourself and how to control your impulses and desires. Does this mean that we should become Stoics? No, of course not. I'm not here to tell you that Stoicism is the way. In fact, I disagree with some of its beliefs. But it taught me something. It taught me that there is a difference between confidence and an inflated ego. And controlling your desire to increase your sense of self-esteem is the best way to deal with life. Your goal is to chase your own dreams and not somebody else's, and not to try and beat somebody else. The idea is for your own development. That, however, I realized long after my first encounter with temperance. And what was interesting about it was that it took the shape of a man. We already established that running is one sport that I enjoy, but most of the time I do cycling. So I was at a race in Cousin Luke, this time prepared, no masochism included, and it was around, 50 kilometers long with little elevation, nothing special. So what was important for me about it was that it had been previously completed by ambitious amateurs in the field, like myself, whose records I wanted to beat. There's this app called Strava, and it includes segments of a completed route on which you can compare yourself with other people. Now, for instance, imagine a distance between this street and that street. It's 1 kilometer long, and the fastest time is 1 minute. And mine, for instance, is 1 minute and 30. That's what segments are. Now, Strava is supposed to be the social app for athletes, but for me, it became my major ego boosters. In fact, if you look at my screen time, Jesus. 6 hours and 12 minutes. This is just 1 week. 54 minutes on average were spent every single day with the absolute amount of brainwashing. And in fact, I even paid for the premium version, which costs 100 leva. So not only did I brainwash myself, but I also lost money. And for what? For some comparisons, I had gone completely over the border in terms of what is healthy for ego boosting. Now you may be thinking, how did this guy go from Kazanluk to this random app? Well, it is so that you better understand the events I'm about to present, about the man who I met there, the living representation of temperance. So the race began. For the purpose of the easier ego speech, I'm going to refer to the man as the guy. So the race began, and the guy gained some distance on me, but I caught up to him. I passed him quite aggressively, and he told me, hey, that wasn't very nice. Sadly, I was fully locked in, and I didn't really pay attention to that fact. However, I apologized, and I was starting to feel a little tingle of guilt. He then passed me again, but I caught up to him the second time, but that time I wasn't letting him go. So while I was riding behind him, he said something very interesting. Nice race, huh? Nice race. Bro, my pulse was above its maximum. I was on the verge of giving up, and that guy was saying nice race. I was speechless. The man was, of course, he was trying to boost his ego and self-esteem, but he was doing it in a way that the experience was enjoyable. That's what temperance was and is, being able to enjoy the challenge. It is interesting how even a random guy who I would probably never meet again managed to impact me. It's hard controlling the ego. I find that doing so myself is also hard sometimes, and but knowing what your mistake is makes it 10 times easier. So what if I told you again that your greatest ally and your fiercest rival are still the same? Your ego. It's the whisper that says you can and the roar that says you must. But without temperance, that roar becomes noise, and that whisper turns into a scream that drowns out reason. Ego isn't the enemy. The uncontrolled ego is. Let it challenge you, not consume you. Let it push you, not break you. Because when you combine temperance with ego, ambition with self-awareness, you don't just chase greatness, you enjoy the pursuit. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real win. Thank you.